What's going on, you guys? It's Shiraz Ahmed coming at you with some more financial and business content. If you're one of the tens of thousands of Americans that are moving over the Canadian and US border, you're going to want to stay tuned for this one. Check it out. And for those of you who don't already know me, my name is Shiraz Ahmed. I am a professional financial advisor and associate portfolio manager with Sartoria Wealth of Raymond James, located in Toronto, Canada. I am a cross-border advisor, so today I wanted to go through 6 specific things that you want to be mindful of as an American who's relocating to Canada. And before I get too deep into it, as always, if you guys could please smash that like and subscribe button, it really does help the algorithm pick up content creators. And of course, last but not least, please make sure you hit that bell icon, as it does let you know when we upload new content. So, without further ado, let's jump in. Okay, so as I was mentioning, for those who don't already know, the United States is one of 3 countries on the planet that have a global reporting requirement for its citizens, for tax purposes. Now, before you get all freaked out, no, this doesn't mean that you necessarily owe them any money. It just means that they want to know what you have and where you have it. It's not that big of a deal, but it's important to know, and if you don't like it, you can thank a bunch of people who didn't necessarily do this the right way a bunch of years ago, but this is the world that we live in today. So, that being said, I wanted to let you guys know 6 specific things that you really need to be mindful of. Okay, the first item that I want you guys to be careful of is, what do you do with your retirement accounts or your retirement investment accounts that you left in the United States? Now, you are legally entitled to keep your retirement assets despite the fact that you don't live in the US anymore. The only caveat is you just need to be with a financial institution and a financial advisor that is licensed where you are specifically. So if you're living in Canada now, then you need to make sure that you have an advisor that is licensed in the United States for a Canadian resident. Unfortunately, there aren't that many, but if that is a scenario that you have, that is what is required of it. So point number 2, now this comes up all the time as well. What do I do with my 529 or children's education savings plans? Again, this is something that you're legally allowed to keep, even though you don't live there anymore. The same rules apply as with the retirement accounts. You just need to be with an advisor and a financial institution that is licensed where you are, and specifically can administer a US-based plan outside of the United States. Now, there's a specific caveat that you want to be mindful of with the 529. Unfortunately, on the Canadian side, the Canadian government does not recognize the 529 as a tax-deferred plan. So, there will likely be an extra form that you're going to need to file when you file your taxes every single year. And point number 3, and this is a common one, we literally get this all the time. What do I do with my US-based mutual funds? Most US-based mutual fund providers dictate whether or not they require you to be a US resident in order to own them. Now, unfortunately, the vast majority of them do require residency in order to own a mutual fund. So the general advice that we give is that if you don't live in the United States anymore, unfortunately, you're probably going to need to liquidate your US-based mutual funds. Now, for your stocks, bonds, ETFs, and all those kind of things, that's perfectly okay, and you can typically keep them. You just want to make sure what kind of accounts that you have, and we'll get into that as well. Now, the 4th one we get all the time as well is, okay, we address what happens to my US mutual funds. What about my Canadian ones? Can I own a Canadian mutual fund or an ETF even though I'm a US person? And the general answer is yes, although you probably shouldn't. Now, there's a concept in the United States referred to as passive foreign investment corporations. And it's something that unless you live abroad as an American, you probably won't run into it. However, it is an important detail. Now, passive foreign investment corporation simply dictates any non-foreign corporation that you would have an interest in, such as a mutual fund. So unfortunately, this will require an extra form or multiple forms to be filed when you file your tax return in the US every year. So as an American living abroad, you still have to file to Uncle Sam every year. So Form 8621 is something that you're going to have to do. And while you can own a Canadian-based mutual fund, the typical guidance would be is to avoid them, just because your filing burden is going to go up and your accountant is probably going to end up charging you some more money to file that. So the general advice is, if you can avoid excess complication, then why don't you? Number 5, and this is again a super common one as well. What do I do with my tax-free savings account and my registered education savings plan? Am I eligible to have them even though I'm an American? And the answer is, again, yes, if you're a Canadian resident, you can legally open one up, but is it a good idea? And this is where there's that contradiction again, where you can technically have one, but really you probably shouldn't. Namely, for the reason that it is considered to be a tax exempt vehicle in Canada. Both a tax-free savings account and an education savings plan are both treated the same by the US government. So the reality is in Canada, they have tax favorable treatment, and in the US, unfortunately, when you file your American return, it will be considered to be a taxable account for all intents and purposes in the United States. And typically, again, the advice is if you can minimize your complication, why not? So the juice typically isn't worth the squeeze on this one, and we normally would advise to avoid having a tax-free savings account. And if you want to have an education savings plan, well, maybe have a Canadian resident or a Canadian person be the plan sponsor. You can still pay for it, just maybe have an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent be the person who is the subscriber for the plan. And point number 6, and this is again a super common one and unfortunately a pretty important one. What happens to my non-retirement accounts or my brokerage accounts in the US? Well, unfortunately, unlike the retirement accounts, your non-retirement assets need to come with you to the country of jurisdiction or where you're a resident of. So your non-retirement assets typically need to come with you to Canada. So you'll have to find a Canadian-based brokerage firm or an advisory firm that can help you with that. There's lots of them that are out there that can do this. However, there may or may not be some tax consequences for moving your funds over the border. Typically, there would be like a revaluation kind of concept that you need to be mindful of. So I would encourage you, if you haven't already done so, talk to a qualified cross-border CPA. They are an extremely essential professional for you to liaise before you do your move. Because like all of us professionals, there's only so much we can do after you've already done it. We can't go back in time and reverse things. So a degree of preventative medicine can go a super long way in minimizing how much complication you have in your life. So those are kind of the 6 big picture things that I think are really important if you're an American moving to Canada. So I'd love to hear back from you guys. Are you moving from the United States to Canada? And if so, I'd love to hear a little bit about what's motivating your move. And as always, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. If you do like the content that I'm creating, please smash that like and subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon, as it will let you know when we upload our next piece of content. So until next time, stay safe out there. Take care. Bye for now.